Conversation analysis is also closely related to discourse analysis. Conversation may be defined as a discourse which is mutually constructed and negotiated between speakers in real time, and it focuses on generating meaningful communication. Usually it is informal and unplanned. In other words, we can say that a conversation may be the performance of speech acts. For example, greetings, inquiries, comments, congratulations, invitations, requests, refusals, acquisitions, and there is a huge list. Cook, however, says that talk may be classed as a conversation when it has the following features. It is not primarily necessitated by a practical task. Any unequal par of participants is partially suspended. The number of the participants is small. Turns are quite short. Talk is primarily for the participants, not for an outside audience. When a discourse or conversation talk would have these features, only then we could call it a conversation according to Cook. Therefore, classroom transactions, doctor-patient interviews, and TV quiz shows are not conversations because they do not have all the properties listed here. We could see the example. The teacher-pupil exchange carries an unequal power balance, where teacher is always powerful and the student is on the other side. So therefore, we cannot call it a proper conversation. Conversation analysis may be seen as an analysis of natural conversation in order to discover the linguistic items used in that conversation, as well as how conversation is used in ordinary life, to find the ways through that analysis that how people use a certain conversation in order to generate certain meanings, the ways various conversational techniques are used in ordinary life. It also includes the study of how speakers decide when to speak something in a conversation and how the utterances of two or more speakers are related with each other. And there are so many other things which are also included in conversation analysis. I'm just trying to give you a synopsis of various things it deals with. Conversation analysis looks at conversation as a linear, ongoing event or as a process and not as a static thing that unfolds little by little and implies the negotiation of cooperation between speakers. We assume in conversational analysis that speakers are usually cooperating with each other, and based on that, we analyze conversation between speakers by applying certain principles like turn taking to see that how much cooperation is going on between various speakers. In this regards, conversation analysis looks into real data, a real conversation among speakers, and then analyzes it in order to demonstrate the system, either linguistic or other paralinguistic items which make that conversation systematic for the listeners. Turn taking, as I mentioned earlier, is an important component of conversation analysis. It focuses on the cooperation between various speakers, and we assume that various peoples are cooperating with each other and speaking on their term. In most cultures, it is generally assumed that one speaker would speak at a time and others would wait for their turn, and then they would speak when the one is finished. Transition relevance place, or TRP, is a point in a conversation where a change of turn is possible or is likely. Sometimes this change is natural, and in more or most natural ways, end of sentence may be considered as a TRP, because by end of sentence we expect a change in turn. Interruption is when speakers do not wait for that point where a natural change is likely. and they interrupt within the talk, and we call it interruption. And it is usually shown in conversation analysis by 2 slashes, which are in front of you on screen as well. Pause is quite acceptable in all cultures, and there is an acceptable length of pause, but when it exceeds from that length, it may have certain meanings. And when pause has meanings, it may be called as an attributable silence in various conversational analysis norms. Adjacency pairs are other tools through which we could understand or interpret a conversation. We believe that most of the conversation happens in pairs. For example, speech acts are performed in pairs. There has to be a part of a conversation, and it is responded by another part. So there should be at least 2 parts of a conversation. For example, we have a proposal, and a proposal may have an acceptance or refusal as a response. So proposal is the first part, and refusal or acceptance may be the other part. So a speech act may have 2 aspects or parts, and we see them in adjacency pairs in conversational analysis. And there could be examples, for example, question, answer, offer, accept, blame, deny, request, acceptance, promise, acknowledgement. There could be a preference structure in adjacency pairs. For example, each first part is assumed to have a preferred answer or preferred second part. In this regard, we could see that a request may have a preferred answer or reply in form of acceptance, and a dispreferred reply in form of refusal. There are also certain sequences of communication or conversation. As speakers mutually construct and negotiate their conversation, some sequences are more likely to occur. We have pre-sequences which are actually before the actual conversation or the meaning a speaker intends to communicate, and they actually set the ground for conveying those meanings. And it may roughly be called the initial talk before the actual talk. Then we have insertion sequence, which may happen between adjacency pairs, and they fall between those various adjacency pairs, and they create a gap between first part of the actual adjacency pair and the second part of adjacency pairs. But they may be considered as adding to meanings in certain situations. There are certain limitations of conversation analysis as well. There is a lack of system, as we do not have an exhaustive system or a list of adjacency pairs in various languages. So it becomes very difficult to identify various agency pairs or new agency pairs which may happen anytime in human language. Conversation analysis also doesn't seem to take into account the pragmatic or socio-linguistic aspects of interaction, which may be a shortcoming in overall discourse analysis, but it may be overcome by using other forms of discourse analysis along with conversation analysis. So conversation analysis may be strengthened by using pragmatic and sociocultural meanings of various discourses.